Yeah, that's just challenging your identity, challenging who you think you are and how you operate. I talk a lot about thoughts, fear just being a thought. Who you see, like me, that's just made up on perception. So what helped me was challenging who my ego was saying I was, challenging or auditing how I was living my life. And was that being congruent to the vision I was working towards? We always talk about goals and things like that, but we never really, or we tend not to often audit if our actions are matching up to that. And so for me, it was just getting really clear on that perspective of who I am and where I'm going, and if the choices I'm making are aligning. And so I just say just getting perspective, self-awareness. I mean, it's a common word, but really understanding consciousness of self. I would say that. Can you guys see me? Can you hear me? Awesome. Let me full screen this. And there we go. Awesome. Good afternoon, Kymanox. I appreciate your time and for the opportunity to share today. And like Dan was saying, I appreciate the intro, but Dan was saying, even though Steve and I share the same last name, we didn't know each other until not even a year ago. And when we met, it was because I actually went to an event that a friend invited me to that was a networking event. And I probably had no reason being there besides curiosity. And so I was looking at the list of speakers and I saw Steven's name on there, and I just thought to myself, I wonder what another Perry is up to in the world. And so I happened to wander into the room that he was speaking, and he shared his story and his journey of creating his vision, and a lot of the things he mentioned resonated with me. So I decided to wait in line after and to share my gratitude, but most importantly share the things that I thought stood out to me. And that's been a theme of mine, is reverse engineering people I look up to that are successful in my eyes and wanting to connect with them as virtual mentors. And Steven was someone I was able to do that in person. And so getting to talk with him a little bit more, 8 or 9 months later, he reached out to me and told me about the Be Bold theme and asked me if I'd want to share my story. And I thought I'd love to. I'm always grateful to. And I thought my story is one of always being bold, always taking inspired action despite being told I can't, or you're gonna fail, or things like that. And so today I want to share my journey of self to purpose and how chasing my dream saved my life and gave me my purpose. Because two of the most common questions I get asked are, how do I get motivated? How do I find motivation? Or how do I find my purpose? And for me, the response I come up with is just reflecting on my journey. It took me experiencing life and going after what I wanted to better myself in the process. And through the journey, I uncovered my purpose, and that's where I am today. And the best way I can give context to that is by sharing my story. And my beginnings, grew up on Massachusetts, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, I should say. And I was always fascinated with sports. It came into my life at an early age. And by the time I was in middle school or so, BMX came across, and it intrigued me in so many different ways. And by the time I got into high school, it took over my life. And there was a turning point in middle school where the lens of which I saw my life and all the decisions I were to make, it was based upon how this dream I created to become a professional BMX athlete. It was based upon how that was going to help me. And that became really important when I made one of my first, I'd say, pivotal moments, pivotal choices in my life was picking between a traditional high school and a technical trade school where I grew up. And on Cape Cod, it's heavily trade, inspired. A lot of people work in construction or plumbing, electrical, things like that. And I started working for a friend of our family in his landscaping business around 7th and 8th grade. Just started, working part-time in the summers, things like that. And I knew there was this co-op program in the technical trade school. And come, sophomore year, if your grades were high enough, you could enroll in this, which meant you could work for 2 weeks, get credit, earn money, and then go back to academics 2 weeks and cycle on and off. And so to me, looking at my life through the lens of BMX, I was like, I can go to school less, I can make money, and I can learn to have my own business one day, and I can use that money to travel to compete. And that's what I did. And I was very successful with it. I was creating good grades, I was doing well on the job. By the time I was 17, I was running my own routes with a 16-foot trailer, truck, and mowers and all that. And I had turned professional my junior year. And although my boss was very supportive, very proud, he was a friend of the family, he noticed I was taking a lot of Fridays and Mondays off to compete around the country, and the BMX season didn't happen to match up the greatest because the BMX and landscaping season shared the summer. And so I was taking a lot of days off, and he came to me and He's like, hey Josh, like, you're one of my main guys. I need you here. You're taking a lot of days off. I mean, it's to the point now where I'm sorry, but you have to pick. Is it going to be BMX or is it going to be working for me? And in that moment, I just knew my dream was BMX. I loved landscaping. I loved working my hands. I loved turning something into something in my eyes better. I love being outside. I love the idea of having my own business one day, but BMX is what fueled me. And I knew I wouldn't be able to pursue BMX in my 30s or 40s at least as well as I could have at the time as a teenager. And I knew I could always go back to school. I could always get a job again. I could always start my own business, whatever I wanted. But I knew if I wanted to be one of the best, I had to be where the best were, training every day. And this was an opportunity to do so on top of Dave Mira, one of the most iconic BMX riders, like the Michael Jordan of our sport. Allowed me to train with him in his facility in Greenville, North Carolina, about an hour and a half here from Durham. And so with the support of my family, I dropped out of high school, I quit my job, I moved in with some friends that were going to East Carolina University, a little bit older than me, and I stayed with them on their couch. Actually, I rented their storage closet for the first, 2 months of my first experience living on my own. And the reason my parents believed in me and trusted me was because I had showed them the work ethic in school, with my job, and with my sport, and never got into trouble. Again, the lens I saw life was BMX. Drinking? No, can't do that. I want to be a BMX athlete. Drugs? Girls even? No, I want to ride, and I wanted to make this happen. So they supported me in doing that, and I made the move, and I had a lot of success early on. About a year and a half after that, photo on the left is April 2009, won my first pro contest. That photo is the moment when I found out I had won the best trick contest, which earned me a Harley Davidson on top of all the cash I just won for landing a trick I invented and landed for the first time in competition. And the photo on the right is November 2009, my 21st birthday. And the objective that night was, don't let Josh go empty-handed without a Long Island iced tea. And the gentleman in the photo is someone I looked up to and admired in the BMX world, and as you can see, he was making sure my cups were full, and by the face I'm making, I'm not quite with it. But that was the go-around, the entire, I'd say, first 5 years of me living on my own. And to me, the success I was creating, I was in X Games, I was traveling the world, I was being paid by companies to live my dream, to represent them. I was living my dream on another level I'd never fathomed. And the success to me meant the sense of freedom. And that's at least what I thought. I was doing what I wanted, when I wanted. I was eating what I wanted, when I wanted. Sleeping, and it consisted of a lot of late nights partying, chasing girls, drinking copious amounts of alcohol and way too much sugar. And at the same time, this 2009 year, I had all the success, yet I was suffering inside. And I was making this association with a certain amount of alcohol at night, the pain that I was experiencing would go away. And there was 5 or 6 severe cases I had that year of this debilitating headache, these migraines, vision problems. I was losing my vision. It was, the best way I can explain it is like when you wake up and you're like rubbing your eyes, but it's like blurry, kind of foggy. It was like that all the time certain days. And I'd be vomiting from the pain sometimes. And so I'd drive myself into the urgent care, the emergency room. My friends would have to bring me in. Every time I'd ask, should we do a scan on my brain? Like, I feel like there's something wrong, like something that's not right. I don't know, like an x-ray, CAT scan, MRI. Like, I didn't know what to ask for. I just knew there was something more. And every time I'd ask, they would deny me a scan. They'd say, Josh, you're 20. I was 20 to 21, depending on the time of the year. You're young, you're healthy, you're a professional athlete, you're in shape, blood work doesn't show anything. Like, you just have headaches. It's pretty normal in today's society. And they send me home with a list of pain pills, tell me to come back if I needed more. And in those moments, I felt like that was wrong, but I also felt like, who am I? I'm just a civilian. I'm a BMX athlete, high school dropout. What do I know? Who am I to challenge the doctor? He knows my health better than he's a doctor. And so the little backstory of the pain pills is when I was about 12 or 13, I had the flu and I took some Tylenol and I immediately threw it up. So I always had this association of medication equaling throwing up. So I was always afraid of it. So I never took them. And it was about March, like beginning of March of 2010. This is about over a year of this process happening. And I finally took I think it was like some Percocets, something like that. I finally took them. And thankfully I wasn't driving because on the way home, I just immediately threw up all over the car. And we had to pull over and I'm on the grass on my hands and knees and it's just nonstop. And then it came to a point where I realized I was surrounded by my own blood and it was just nothing but blood coming out of me. And in that moment, I was just utterly confused because the doctor just told me I'm healthy, I'm actually normal. and yet I'm here suffering, literally waiting for that moment where people they joke about coughing up a lung. That's what came to mind in that moment. I was seriously waiting for something to show me a sign of something more that I could go back to them and say, see, there's something wrong. Nothing happened. It stopped. I picked myself up like I was taught to do. I was trained to do in BMX. I was conditioned to get up and try again if I wanted it bad enough. My family taught me that work ethic as well. So in that moment, I accepted suffering as a part of my reality moving forward. I accepted the fact that if I wanted to live my dream, if I wanted to live my life, this was just something I'd have to deal with and I'd have to get used to doing and experiencing. So went home, went about my day-to-day, and it was a couple weeks later when this day wasn't so bad. There wasn't, I got to the point where I was really good at riding off of muscle memory, which probably isn't the safest thing to do on top of something so dangerous to begin with, 15, 20 feet in the air. And I was having that like foggy, eye sensation. And then I just wanted to ride, but I was confused and I just thought I was fine. They told me. So I got really good at muscle memory. And then one day it wasn't so bad. So it was more, conscious, clear vision. And I was trying this new trick in a foam pit, which is basically just a jump with a long rectangle box full of foam blocks that gymnastics and cheerleaders use that we adopted. So we could land tricks in a more safe manner than back in the day where you'd have 4 people holding a rug out and someone would try backflip onto it. Hopefully no one slipped and fall. So we advanced in that technology. And this day I've been doing the trick, I think like 10, 15 times. It was a variation of another trick I had learned. And I felt really confident. And I knew the contest starting off the season was in a couple weeks in April, the same one I won the year prior. And I wanted to bring this to it. I wanted to show I had progressed. I wanted to add this to my routine. So I knew I had to do it on a real ramp for the first time. Well, that was when everything went wrong. So into the foam pit, the jump was about a foot taller. So I thought, okay, on the real ramp, foot shorter, I have to flip and spin harder. So I over-rotated the trick, the flip and the spin, and I got ejected off my bike, hit my head, I got knocked out. Now all of a sudden this scan that I've been asking for about a year and a half was deemed necessary to look for a traumatic brain injury. And after all that time, I finally got what I wanted. And I had learned that if I didn't hit my head, I'd be dead. And as you can see the images, there was something more going on than just pain and just headaches. And so I go in the next day, I get the MRI. The day after that, I remember driving to the doctor's office to get the report. And at this time, I'm clueless. All I think is, typical concussion protocol follow-up, MRI. I'm gonna go in there, they're gonna tell me another week or two, no big deal. It could be worse, Maybe it'll be good, maybe I'll recover a little bit more and won't be so sore. And I'm sitting in the doctor's office, and mind you, I just turned 21 a few months prior. My family's still up north of Massachusetts, and I'm by myself, thinking I'm just gonna get told 1, 2, maybe 3 weeks off the bike. And the doctor walks in and he has the report in his hands and he asks me, hey Josh, how you doing? I'm like, all right, maybe a little sore, but I'm just kind of eager to figure out when I can get back on my riding. It's all right. Well, there was a problem with the scan. There was an abnormal report. And it's weird, I tend to fall asleep pretty easily in MRIs, and I twitch when I fall asleep. That could be, signs of traumatic brain injuries. But I was like, oh man, I know I twitch when I fall asleep. I tend to fall asleep in MRIs. Do we have to do it again? Because I know if you move, it messes it up. He's like, no. The report came out clear. There was no swelling, no bleeding, so no sign of traumatic brain injury, but there's something in your brain that shouldn't be there. And I remember laughing out loud, and I was like, what do you mean there's something in my brain that shouldn't be there? I couldn't possibly have put something in there, so what could it be? And then he went on to say, well, we don't know at this time if it's benign or cancerous, but we do know if you want a shot at living, you have to have surgery immediately, and there's still a chance you may not live with the surgery. By the way, you'll probably never ride your bike again, or at least at the level you do today. And in that moment, everything just shut down for me. The best way I can explain it beyond just this a roller coaster of emotions where I just felt numb and broken was, you ever watch a movie, character gets some bad news, that ringing noise kicks in, that really annoying noise in the ear kicks in, and the camera slowly zooms out as everything goes into slow motion. That's exactly how I felt. It felt like I had just lifted out of my body and I was watching this horror movie unfold that I was starring in. And I just instantly started thinking, man, all those people that doubted me, they're gonna be right. I'm gonna let down all the people that supported me. And then the victim mentality kicked in where I was like, what did I do to deserve this? Am I that bad of a person? And why is this happening to me? And instantly, the next thought was death. I just equated tumor, whether it was benign or cancer, I didn't know. I just thought my life's over, I'm dead. And there was an interesting moment in the next 9 to 10 days before surgery. Surgery happens, I think, like 9 or 10 days later, where that focus shifted. And this is where I've learned about how our perception is based upon our interpretation of an event that happens in our life. Not many people ask me how I felt right before surgery. And that's why I included this photo of the IV being put in my arm before surgery, because most people ask me how I felt when I was diagnosed. And that's where I've learned about perceived fear. And in that moment, my world had shifted because someone put a thought in my mind that created this emotion of fear based on the thought that I was gonna die. And that transitioned over that 9-day, 10-day period to shifting my focus to, rather than what if I don't wake up? What if I do? What happens when I wake up? What am I gonna do differently? And the reason I was able to shift that focus was because of two people. My mom, she battled cancer for I don't know how many, 8 or 9 years. She's alive and well today. And I was like, oh, I'm a byproduct to her, I can do this. And then Lance Armstrong, another cyclist. A little bit different, their objective is to stay wheels on the ground, mine are to go up and high and do all these tricks. But to me, these were people that overcame something that I was faced with. Lance specifically had his head cut open. I could relate to that because that's what I was about to go through. And so I started to shift my focus onto my vision, my riding. And it was that moment where I learned like perspective is everything, because I was alive still. I had the fortunate experience of being grateful to still have a chance to change the outcome of tomorrow. Not a lot of people get that in these situations, but I was able to focus on waking up. And that's where, perspective is what creates a reality, because the way we think creates these chemical emotions that dictate or influence how we act, which creates the reality we live in. And I learned that right then and there very vividly. And after 6 hours of surgery, 75 staples across my skull and 16 stitches down my forehead, which the surgeon did a really great job because you can't even tell, and then 4 titanium screws later, I was awake. Despite the risk of going blind, being paralyzed, having a stroke, even dying, I opened my eyes and I saw my younger brother, I saw my parents, I saw my grandparents, and I saw some friends that were there. And it was one of the, people talk about being born again, like these second chances at life. Like that was literally how it felt to me. I was like, this is amazing, I woke up. And despite my ignorance, thinking at best, I'm back on my bike in a year, I was riding 5 weeks later and competing in another 8 weeks after that. So like 13, 14 weeks out of surgery, I was back in England and I got 8th place in my first contest back, and I was beyond stoked for that. And I really attest that to the focus, because I could have given up in that moment and just played the victim card out, and no one would have judged me. No one would have ever questioned that. But thankfully I had people in my life, and what I call virtual mentors, that I looked up to that didn't allow their circumstances to define them in how they chose to move forward. And that's what I adopted. And at the end of the day, something that I can't help but share and become very passionate about is the fact that health is internal. It took an MRI to see what was taking over my life to ultimately save my life. Like I said, if I didn't hit my head, I'd be dead today. And I've learned, I used to kind of like categorize health based on numbers and physical appearances. But I broke all that. I didn't have a pain pill deficiency. I looked healthy on the outside, but I had something severely wrong with my internal. And because I was judged by my cover, it almost cost me my life. And because of an MRI, I'm still here, but it took hitting my head. And a quick story on that, a friend of mine in Delaware told me a couple of years ago that they were doing these mobile MRIs, free MRIs for people that want to come in. In like a week, they found 7 people with a brain tumor that didn't know it. And so that's why I can't help but share my story of like allowing people to use my story as an excuse to challenge their doctors, because for so long I thought that my doctor was a dictator. I didn't know that that was maybe a teammate or a coach that I was paying to be on my team. And so I just love sharing my story because it's helped people get a second opinion, which I think is very important. And like I said, I was competing 14 weeks later and got back to doing my thing. I was traveling the world again. I think this year, actually, for the second diagnosis, we were on America's Got Talent, the 2012 year. And so that was an amazing experience. And we made it all the way to the finals. I didn't show up for the finals. I was actually in India when this happened. And we got beat by a dancing dog for America's Got Talent. So that was cool, but made the top 40 or 50, whatever it was. But I couldn't make that finals, the final appearance, because I was in India. I could have, but I chose to go to India because there was to me, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go travel and share my love for BMX with, India and whatever events I forget what the events we were performing for. But anyways, I was there, and it was like 2 days before I was coming home. I get this email from my mom. She's like, hey, hope everything's going well. When you get back, we gotta talk about some news. And I was like, what? Something's wrong, because like otherwise you tell me. And I remembered I had an MRI checkup right before I left, and so I got it out of her, and she told me, yeah, they found 2 new tumors that grew back on the same side. And a lot of those similar emotions kicked in, and I just felt devastated and frustrated. And on my way home, I started, remembering, hey, I beat this once, and now it's not as severe, so I can do it again. And I just shifted my focus. Like, what do I want? What is the vision I'm working towards? And my surgeon here at Duke University, he told me that because of when they got in my skull and they found the tumor was wrapped around an artery in my optic nerve, they couldn't risk hitting either of them, so it was just some potentially residual cell growth. And one grew back in the front and one in the rear. And he said the same risk apply, if not, it's even more riskful because of how small they are. So he says you have to take radiation. I didn't really like the sounds of that, so the stubborn me went to Dr. Google, and I just researched alternative therapies to radiation. I found gamma knife radiotherapy. So at the time, to me, I found that it had very high percentage rate of success, very low to minimal adverse side effects. People returned to work the next day. It was outpatient procedure. I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. And my mom supported me. The only thing was she asked me to come up to Boston to be close to my family. So I went to Tufts Medical Center, had the procedure done, and because of that procedure, the tumor shrunk for 4 years later. I was back riding my bike 6 days after I got home. I drove back to Greenville, North Carolina that day, and it's been phenomenal. They haven't progressed ever since. And I've shared that treatment with other people, and they found out their doctor agreed it was an option for them that they had never known about. I had to search for it for a couple hours. And I've come really close to the company now, and we've done some PR work and just sharing my story. And something they told me, I went to the headquarters, they showed me the technology. They actually have a machine cut in half, and it's just wild. But they told me this version, they got rid of 4 months later, and they went to an all laser computerized sensory version. So, lucky me, I got to experience what it feels like to be fully awake, sitting upright, and have 4 screws drilled into your skull while you're wide awake. And yeah, they numb the areas, but you see the drill gun, your body's just shaking, and you hear everything, and it's just a bizarre human experience, and it's just nothing short of, it's just part of my life. But very thankful they moved away from that now. And then it was the next year, I had really started getting fascinated with what I could do that was in my control, that was a choice of mine. And so I started learning about this holistic health and nutrition piece. And a friend gave me this book, Grain Brain, at the end of 2013, that really clicked for me. And Dr. Perlmutter, who I've been able to connect with a couple times now, another virtual mentor of mine, he talks a lot about the correlation and direct causation of elevated chronic levels of blood sugar to brain health and performance decline. And to me, I was in a fearful state because this was 2 times I'd been diagnosed with a tumor, and 3 tumors now. And what he talked about was this high fat, low carb way of eating, which is pretty popular now. Everyone's heard of keto and all that. But what he talked about was the epigenetic factors of it, and inflammation, free radical damage, and oxidative stress, and IGF, and tumor growth, and all these things. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And so I adopted that for many years. And then it wasn't until the beginning of 2017 where I went all in on the ketogenic diet, which is just a metabolic state of creating ketones in your blood. And it can be used as a tool or lifestyle. There's a lot of fluff around that, a lot of myths and stuff, so that's a whole nother story. But when February 2017 came around, I was diagnosed for a 3rd time with a routine scan. And this was coming off of my best year competing ever in the World Series of BMX in 2016, where I was one of few Americans in the top 10. And I was just on top of the world getting ready for the next year. And they told me, these are 2 new tumors on the right side of your brain. We think it's a genetic disorder, but the only way is to test, which requires surgery. And I asked, I was like, well, what do you guys know about treating it? They're like, well, there's not much you can do besides, radiation or this or that. It's not benign, or it's benign, it's not cancerous, so chemo's not really not. And I was like, all right, that was all I needed to know. I just heard genetic. And I remembered epigenetics. I was like, man, there's something to this. Let me try out. I've been through the surgery. I've been through the radiation. Let me try what's in my power to see how it goes. Worst case scenario, I have gamma knife in my back pocket. Cool. And so I went all in. I started testing my blood. I started getting really serious about my diet, really serious about my mindset and meditation, breathing techniques. And because of that, a year later and another year later and so on, no progression of any of the tumors now. And so become really passionate about that. And I just think it's really powerful because a lot of people live in this space where we don't think we're capable of creating the outcomes we want, but we dismiss all the power we have. And so self-empowerment's become really fascinating to me. And just a shift in mindset can lead to all these other shifts. And with that being said, today I live my life on my own terms, despite currently, I don't like saying fighting 4 brain tumors, but I'm living with 4 brain tumors. And it's not often I think about that, which is really interesting when I tell people that, and they're like, oh man, like that's crazy, you don't think about it. It's moments like these where I really reflect on it, or when people ask me or interview me about it, that I reflect on that, because I've chosen not to define my life based on the circumstances and the experiences that I've gone through and I live with, because that's not what I want, and I'm chasing a vision. And so I'm still capable of riding the elite level. I just decided to walk away from my dream after the 3rd brain tumor diagnosis, because it finally clicked what my purpose was. And because I was stubborn, because I was able to overcome these challenges, the 3rd wake-up call, is what I refer to it as, really got me clear on my purpose, which is to serve other people. It's higher than just myself. And that's why I labeled this talk today From Self to Purpose, because it took being selfish, which isn't a bad thing, but I grew up with this dream and I made it happen. And because of that, it saved my life and gave me my purpose. And that's what I do today. And despite the stigma around education and dropping out of high school, I've been able to create a 6-figure business and become a professional athlete built on passion and purpose and inspired action. And with that being said, I've been speaking for about 2 years now, and it's very new to me. And talk about being bold, it's very uncomfortable for me. My dad says I'm crazy, but it's a part of my mission in life. And on that note, I'm also wrote the rough draft of my manuscript for my book. So Steve and I had some fun dialogue a couple weeks ago about that, and seeing someone that I look up to, just like kind of human like me and going through the same challenges of writing. It was pretty fun or funny to go over that. But everything I do today stems back to my why. Like that's the lens I see my life through now. It's a proactive spin around optimization, and my why is to empower people to consciously design their lives by optimizing their health and performance. Because at the end of the day, it took me being forced to change and to see the world differently to get the results I'm getting today. And I don't want people to suffer, because something I've learned is that we can choose to change in a state of joy and inspiration rather than pain and suffering. I had to go through the pain and suffering. Probably didn't have to, but I believe I had to, because I need to learn more and more and more, and I was capable of doing so that way I could help other people with this. And on that note, again, I'm sure you guys have understood, like, gratitude and vision is what I live my life by, and there's so many times I could have given up, and ultimately these 2 people that were close to me, or that are still close to me, are why I do what I do, and I push through. And in 2016, Dave Mirra ended up taking his life and was diagnosed with CTE, and that was a big shock to me in the BMX world, of course. And it just got me more passionate about this brain health and performance piece, but also sharing my story to help people relate that you're not alone. And then in June 27th, 2018, my younger brother, 13 days after he turned 26, he had taken his life as well. And that was a moment that I have never felt as much pain as I had done with the brain tumor diagnosis, but it was just magnified. It shattered a lot of my perspectives on life, a lot of my belief systems. It made me question everything that I was doing and why I was doing it. But at the end of the day, I've remembered, like, I'm alive. I'm grateful to be alive. And it was a reminder that not everyone wakes up. Not everyone will wake up. But we all did. We have a choice to make our life as close to our ideal version as possible. And we owe it to the people that are no longer in our lives, that we care about, we love, to keep pushing forward for the life that we want. And that was a big turning point when someone challenged me. They're like, would your brother want to see you depressed anymore? It's okay to feel that, but is that what he would want for you? Because I was making it about me. And I was like, man, like that's powerful. No, like my brother would not let me be in that state, and he'd probably make fun of me. And I was like, I'm doing him a disservice by not following my passion, by not helping people. So at the end of the day, I just love sharing with people the fact that you may not wake up, other people may not wake up, but you did. And that means you're winning and you're alive. And on that note, I want to leave you guys with these 4 questions. And so I encourage you to take a photo, to write these down. This is being recorded, so I'm sure you guys get a replay later on. But they look simple on the surface area, but if you give them, an open mind and open heart, and you really dive deep beyond your ego trying to protect you from uncovering who you really are in the core, it's okay. But just think of these on that level. Number one, what do you want in your life? Far too often do I find people don't believe they deserve what they want, they don't believe they're capable of what they want, or they just don't know. And so, not what do you think you should want, not what does society say you should want, not what are your parents, your coworkers, your friends, none of that. What do you want in your life? Number two, what do you need in your life? I mean, we know we need oxygen, food, water, shelter, clothing, transportation, and money to pay for all these things today. But what do you need to feel alive? There's a difference between living and being alive. What do you need to feel like you're on purpose, to feel like you're fulfilled, to feel like you're taking action, to feel like you're contributing, to feel like you're growing? What do you need to feel alive? Number three, what's holding you back from the things that you want and need in your life? Most common three things I've seen show up in conversations of my 31 years on this earth that I can reflect on is fear of failure, fear of judgment, and fear of success, which is a tricky one because it has to do with change and perception and all that stuff, but just keep it simple. Those are the three things. And the fourth question is, what are you willing to do for the things that you want and need in your life? I've shared a few things that I've been challenged with and what I've been willing to do for what I want. But what are you willing to do for the things that you want and need in your life and that ideal version that you hold for yourself? And when it comes to fear, just remember that fear is a thought and thoughts can be changed. I appreciate you guys, and I think at this moment we got some time for questions, but again, thank you so much for the opportunity to share, and I appreciate all of your time and attention, and I guess we'll move on with the questions. So the craziest trick was the one I won the Harley with 10 years ago, or 11 years ago now actually. You do a 360, you do one bar spin, so you spin the handlebars once, spin around again, and then at that point you spin the back end around called a tail whip. So it's a 360, bar spin, tail whip. And it took me 10 times just falling and slamming the ground. It somehow finally landed it just barely, and that's been probably the scariest or the biggest trick I've landed. I've tried other ones, but that one actually was successful. Yeah, that's just challenging your identity, challenging who you think you are and how you operate. You know, I talk a lot about thoughts, fear just being a thought. Who you see, like me, that's just made up on perception. So what helped me was challenging who my ego was saying I was, challenging or auditing how I was living my life. And was that being congruent to the vision I was working towards? We always talk about goals and things like that, but we never really, or we tend not to often audit if our actions are matching up to that. And so for me, it was just getting really clear on that perspective of who I am and where I'm going, and if the choices I'm making are aligning. And so I just say just getting perspective, self-awareness. I mean, it's a common word, but really understanding consciousness of self. I would say that. I think for me, it was just seeing people do something I wanted to that looked similar to me. I saw other human beings doing something I wanted, and rather than feeling like I couldn't, I used that. I was like, I was young, I was naive, I had a lot of life experience to go through, but I just saw, hey, that person's doing something I enjoy. They didn't start that way, and that's what led into my reverse engineering, what I call my virtual mentors paths, and just seeing where people started and where they went, learning their struggles and learning what they learned so that way I can apply it. So at the end of the day, it was just seeing that was possible and then instilling that belief in myself. And that was a theme that carried out through my BMX career. So-and-so did this trick for the first time. I didn't even think of that. And I went and learned it a month later or a week later, whatever it was. So it's just the power of seeing and believing. Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. I mean, it's a lot of the things I've been saying, but it's at the end of the day, I just want people to know, one, you're not alone with whatever you're experiencing, whatever challenges that you're experiencing, but two, your thoughts aren't your destiny. They can be, but you can change those thoughts. And so the slide I shared earlier about perception, becoming your reality, it's based on how you think, because that triggers an emotional response that influences how you act. And unless you're auditing those factors and auditing your process, you're not going to know where you're going to go, and then you may wake up one day and not be happy with where you are. And I went through that, and I don't want to go through that again. So I do all I can to just be so aware of how I think, how I feel, and know it's all a choice. Not be at effect to life, but be at cause for the life I live. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. You guys have a good one.
through the corporate strategy.